network. We started a podcast last year, but we provide placement packages for kiddos coming into foster care. So, a lot of times they come with the clothes on their back, and so we deliver to 26 counties, which is the size of West Virginia, actually, um, the area that we cover. But we provide this placement package, which kind of helps the kiddos get some of the things that they need as they're entering that foster home.
When you started to do this, what was the reason why you got involved in this type of work specifically?
Yeah, so I was in foster care myself. I was adopted, and so my wife and I were always going to do that at some point. But I was leading worship and doing a youth program at a little church plant at an apartment complex, and we got to know this young mom. And so when CPS was getting involved, she asked us to take them as opposed to them going with a foster family that they didn't know. And so we said yes. And some folks, they came, with nothing, and some folks just brought us stuff, and it was like, man, this is it felt so good to be seen and to have this help with these babies. I had a daughter that was married and one getting married in 3 months. Didn't have anything for a 2, 4, and 6-year-old. And so when they stepped up and brought us this stuff, it was like, man, this is what we should be doing.
It's like it was your calling, and here
Mhm.
you are serving that calling, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was very much a God thing. He made it abundantly clear. I was kind of freaked out a little bit, like worried how I was gonna feed these extra babies and stuff like that. And I was reading my Bible, and James was just I didn't go looking specifically for anything. I was just doing my Bible reading, and I got down to verse 27, uh, and it says, "To care for widows and orphans, this is true religion." And I was like, "Man, okay, God, this is this is what you're calling us to do."
When you look back on your own journey through the foster care system,
Mhm.
um, what are some of the things that you remembered about that journey that really stuck out to you and maybe impacted you either positively or negatively?
So I was 2 when we were adopted. My parents adopted 5 boys. 4 of us were brothers, and then one they had adopted a couple years prior in a different state. And so we were brought into this home. This goes. I don't remember like showing up at their house or things like that. Um, but my brother, who was 7 when we were adopted, had been in 17 different placements by the time he made it to my parents' home. And and the truth is, it was not the home that we were adopted into was not a great place. There was a lot of trauma that happened there in the home. And so we didn't have just this great, wonderful experience. Growing up. It was not healthy. It wasn't positive, and so when the opportunity came, we were like, we're gonna be different. We're gonna love these kids no matter what, and we're gonna do what we can to love on them and to provide a safe and stable, loving home.
I remember when, and I shared before we spoke how some of my friends, they have their own foster home journey.
Hmm.
Some came up through it, some adopted children. One thing that they shared, a few things that they shared, but one thing that really stuck out to me was that they share that terrain, you'd be surprised how many children out there need a home.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And when I thought about that, I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, there's probably tens of thousands. And they're saying, no, it's actually more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And they shared that sometimes a child would find a home and then they'd have to leave that home, go back into the system, and then find another home.
Yep.
Um, was that either your experience personally or because I know you shared 17, or was that also the experience of some of the children that you adopted?
So my kiddos we were blessed in that they came to us and stayed with us. Now, our experiences have been, like I said, my brother had 17 homes. I don't remember all the different homes, but I had 6 between what happens a lot of times is the kids will get removed and then placed somewhere, and then they go back with the bio family, and then they come back into care and things like that. And in Texas, they call that recidivism, right? And we talk a lot about recidivism rates in prison, where, if someone has been to prison, they're more likely to go back to prison. Well, the foster care system is similar in that they measure that the likelihood of a child, once they've been in care, when they go back to the bio family, what are the chances that they're going to come back into care? Um, and in Texas, it's 45%. So if a kiddo comes into care and then makes it back to the bio family within 5 years, they have a 45% chance of being back in the system. So it's a back and forth and back and forth. And then the number of kids that get moved between foster homes in Texas is pretty significant. The kiddos have uh, an average placement of 1.2 homes per year. So, in other words, most kids have more than one place to call home at a given time.
What do you think are some of the impacts that that would have on the children involved
Oh,
in those
it's
situations?
Yeah, it's significant. The research has shown that every major move, right? So once when they are removed from their bio family and placed with the foster home, that's a 6 month behavioral and developmental regression, right? So they go backwards in development. And then if they when they let's say that they stay in that one foster home the whole time, and then they go back to the bio family. Well, that move again is another 6 month behavioral and developmental regression. And so if they get moved from foster home to foster home to foster home, every time it's a 6 month behavior and developmental regression. So you might have a kid that's chronologically, biologically 10 years old, but behaviorally and developmentally, they're more like an 8-year old.
Because they haven't grown at the same pace as maybe their peers who didn't have that experience.
Yeah, those big removals or regressions. They kind of step back. I mean, you think about it. I tell folks it's kind of like being dropped in the middle of the Amazon jungle naked, right? Nothing's the same. Chances are the school's different. You have no friends, no family. I mean, the chances in our area of Texas of staying in the county that you're from. So if you get removed from Randall County, staying in Randall County is 9%. So the chances are they're moved to a different county. So again, different schools, nothing's the same, nothing's familiar. And so, these big movements are just very difficult for kiddos to adapt to and try to feel safe and stable in that home when they've been ripped out of what was their normal. Their normal might not seem normal to you or me, but it's normal to them. And so, when they get taken from that and now they're placed with this family that they don't know, it's tough on them.
I'm looking at the when you share that, it made me think of my childhood and all the times that I moved, either
Hmm.
because my parents moved or they moved because of work or I just happened to move schools, which I think a lot of kids, because you and I look around the same age, we just move schools just
Hmm.
'cause. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is, right?
Right.
And I look back now and I was like, wow, it actually did have an impact on me
Hmm.
because it's new people, new environment, new friends, new everything.
Hmm.
Granted, it's not 1.2 per year,
Hmm.
but I couldn't imagine having to do that every single year
Hmm.
at such a very young age. And I could just imagine how traumatizing that is to the children.
Yeah. They're coming out of a traumatic situation already. And now nothing's the same. Nothing's familiar. You don't have any common friends. You don't have any family. Everything is different. And so it is tough. It's tough to try to be successful and stable in a situation where nothing's the same.
Yeah, and plus we're social creatures, right? And kids
Right.
that age, they need that routine, that
Mm-hmm.
familiarity. How
Mm-hmm.
many times do you go somewhere and you just it's like you're collecting friends, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
sooner or later there's five or six of you. They're missing out, and it's like they have to learn to adapt and grow much faster than their actual age, which could
Mm-hmm.
stunt them on an emotional level in so many different ways. Would that be accurate to say as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely accurate. Yeah, it's these you know, we want the kids to come out of that terrible situation. They're being removed because there's something bad has gone on. Um, but just the act of being removed and placed in this new environment with this new family and things like that. I mean, think about it. You got a 3-year old, um, and he knows nobody familiar. Nothing is familiar. They eat different foods. The house smells different. The bed feels different. Mom's voice isn't there. I mean, it is traumatic.
When I think of foster parents and foster homes,
Mhm.
in my 20s, I'm almost 40 now. In my 20s, I had a specific view of it just because of the way it was presented in film, movies, and TV shows. I think everyone knows Annie,
Mhm.
the play, and all these other things, right? It just seemed like it was the Wicked Witch of the West
Right.
in the house, right? Or the the gingerbread house kids thing. It was just these horror stories that you would hear,
Hmm.
but it's essentially, as I got older, I realized it's children who are coming out of a traumatic experience, hoping to find a home that isn't as traumatizing or, best case scenario, healthy and full of life, energy, and joy.
Hmm.
What are some of the myths or misconceptions of foster children that you would want to clarify and or debunk?
I would say, there's a myth out there that foster parents are just in it for the money. The truth is, foster families, they don't their reimbursement that they get is not it's not enough to buy the groceries, right? It's the my experience with foster families has been that they're opening their homes to these kiddos because they are passionate about helping them to be safe and to be stable and to be loved. And there's a thought out there that, well, man, if I could never do that because I could never love them and let them go. And so the kind of the implication is, well, those people that are out there that are fostering, well, they must not really love these kids if they can let them go. And it's like, no, they're brokenhearted when these kids go and they're going back into a good environment. Like they know that it's a good environment. Like they still love them. They're still attached to them. And that even though they want them to be in this in with their bio family if that's at all possible. But a lot of times they're aware that the scenario that they're going back into isn't going to be healthy, and so they're brokenhearted. But ultimately they're here. They're called to serve, and they're going to love the kids as long as they're in their home, whether it's a couple weeks or a couple years. And so I think that there's just kind of this attitude around foster families that's negative. And are there some people out there that are doing it for the wrong reasons? Sure, there are. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But my experience across the board, almost completely, has been these are folks that have seen the need. I'll tell you a ton of the families that we work with, they were impacted by the system some way direct. Either they were in the system or they went to school with somebody who was in the system or something like that. And they've kind of been confronted with the reality of the situation. So they're stepping in saying, "Hey, I want to provide a safe and stable, loving home for these kiddos for as long as it's needed." And sometimes they end up being able to adopt a kiddo because the bio families can't get their they can't get the help that they need, and so they end up not being able to have a safe and stable home for the kiddos to come back to. But they're doing it because they want to provide a safe and stable, loving home for some kids that have been through just really, really traumatic situations.
And I'm going to support that as well. For those who may think that there's some people who are in it for the money. In every situation, you can find bad people. They're the
Right.
small group, right?
Hmm.
There's are there foster parents who maybe shouldn't be foster parents? Of course, probably, right?
Hmm.
Are there biological parents that shouldn't be parents? Right? Right? So I think sometimes it's more of a projection thing, thinking that, oh my God, I'm a parent. How can I give up my child? You don't know that person's circumstances. Maybe
Hmm.
they weren't ready. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're whatever. Or maybe they think that Matt will be a better father than I could ever be because I have my own issues,
Hmm.
right? And I
Yeah.
think sometimes people get lost in that because they're just thinking that you're getting paid or you're getting X amount of dollars or whatever that they're thinking for being a foster parent. Okay, your biological parent, when you have children here in Toronto, Canada, you get what? A child tax.
Hmm.
You're still getting money, right? So now is a conversation that any single person that wants to become a parent, they're doing it for money? No, I think for the most part, people are doing it out of love,
Yeah.
right? And I think that should always be the the guiding light. Like I wasn't raised with my mother or my father. My grandmother took me in.
Mm.
My grandmother took me in. I most likely would have entered in a foster home. I would have been a totally different version of myself,
Sure.
right? But I strongly believe that someone out there would have loved me in the way that I need to be loved because someone stepped up and did.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Absolutely.
when you're doing that now, how does that make you feel knowing that you're stepping up, you and your wife, to give love to people that maybe they didn't get it in the way that they needed to, but they're getting it now through the both of you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a, it's a humbling experience. It's difficult. I mean, there are all kinds of struggles that the quote unquote normal family doesn't have to wrestle with. Like I say, they came out of a tough situation, and so there's there's some struggles that they've had to face because of what they came out of, and it's tough. A lot of foster families will resonate with. I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know it was going to be this hard, right? That's a sentiment that we have felt, that so many of the foster families that we interact with on a daily basis feel, that it's tough. When kiddos have come from trauma, they struggle with trusting anyone, right? Because they have been hurt by those closest to them, and so why would you trust someone when the people closest to you have hurt you so deeply? And so it takes an extra measure of uh, grace and willingness, just to day in and day out provide that safe and stable, loving home to the best of your abilities, and trying to learn as much as you can to to try to better understand how can I help this child that's struggling. And it's like I say, it's tough. It's not for the faint of heart, but the work it's valuable because these kids, they're worth it.
When you mention that it's tough and it's something that it's the work that's worth it, where do you pull your source of strength and patience from?
So, I mean, my relationship with God is that's where we get that. In and of myself, I am not this great, amazing, loving person. I'm a human, and and I struggle with. I've learned not to pray for patience, because when you ask for patience, it's like I'm going to give you something to be patient for, and so I pray for endurance and for for grace, to help me every day to try to get up and be the kind of dad that I need to be for the kiddos that are in my care. And so by my health strength comes from the Lord, right? It is not. it's not something I can do in and of myself. That is just not my gifting to just be able to be this loving and gracious dad and husband, in and of myself. That's just not that's not my ability to do it by myself.
That's very humbling and very humble of you to say, but I would like to say that I think you're an amazing person for what you're doing. I think it takes a lot of courage to do what you do because not everyone can do that. And I share that because I know what it's like to have someone step up when maybe other people couldn't. So
Hmm.
when I hear you share that, when I hear what you've done, where I hear where you've come, I think of an example of a man that is strong, a man that's determined, a man that has the endurance, a man that is focused. So I can understand that maybe you don't want to toot your own horn, but I think we need to celebrate more people who's going to step up for that because if you look around the world today, my friend, there's a lot of people who aren't stepping up for children,
Hmm.
but you are stepping up for children. And the work that you do is so close to my heart because I have gone through it. Maybe on a
Sure.
different level, yes, but someone was there for me, and for you to continue to be there for others is truly amazing work. And I'm glad that you can pull from whatever sources that you pull from. So I want to say amen to you, my friend.
I appreciate that. I like I say, I, I, I am no great. There's kind of this thought process that foster parents are this special version of heroes, and we're not. We're just people that want to love on kids and try to provide a safe and stable, loving home for them.
When you look into the eyes of the children that you've adopted, how much of yourself do you see in them?
And it depends on the day, right? There is a lot that you see, where you're like, man, I'm thankful that I was able to pour that into them, but at the same time, um, they have their own personalities and their own giftings and their own struggles as well, and so yeah, you see yourself in them some. But then you see the work that God is doing in them, and hopefully trying to bring about healing.
And that's the key word, right? We all need help with the
Mhm.
healing.
Yeah.
Um, I look at my healing journey and I'm going to ask you about yours. What are some of the things that you do on your healing journey to continue to stay on course?
So I work with a business coach through this nonprofit, and one of the things that he had me start doing at the start of every day is gratitude statements and then I am statements. And so the first thing when I get to the office every morning, I write down the things that I'm thankful for, the things that I'm gracious about. Uh, and then I am statements that say, I am valuable and loved. I am a man of God. I am a love saved child of God. These kinds of statements that reaffirm, because when you've been through the kind of situations that you and I've been through, there's an an innate sense that, well, if there must be something wrong with me, or my parents would have kept me, right? And so starting the day with these gratitude statements and then these I am statements, and then I go through some things that I'm thankful for, answered prayers, and then folks that I'm praying for, and then I spend some time in my word. And so starting that way every day helps me to try to be grounded and aware of who I am, and the good things that God has given me. And that's probably one of the single most impactful things that helps me to kind of keep grounded, and moving forward every day.
Matt, if I was someone that wanted to become a foster parent, and I don't have children myself, but I inspired by your story like I am, and I want to adopt, what's something that you would want me to know, or a few things that you want me to know in preparation, maybe spiritually, emotionally, for that type of undertaking, and why?
Yeah, sure. Well, the first thing to be aware of is that it's tough. I mean, it is tough. Um, like I said, these kiddos are coming to your door because they've been through something horrific. And so from the outset, you've got to know that this is not going to be easy. It's not like it is in the movies where, you just adopt them and everything's just great and happy and hunky dory. There was a movie called The Sound of Freedom. No, it wasn't. Gosh darn. Um, I can't pull the name out of the top of my head at the moment, but it was done in about this church down in kind of East Texas, and it is like very much uh, kind of a real world picture of how difficult this kind of life choice is. And so, don't think that it's just going to be like the movies where, you sweep in and you bring this kid in and they're just so grateful to be saved and they're just, everything's going to be happily ever after because that is not how it goes. It is tough. It is tough every single day. And so, being willing to never stop learning. You know, they used to think that when you adopted an infant, like it was a blank slate, and this kid's coming to you, and they're, everything's new and fresh. But we have learned so much about like what happens inside the mama's womb, in a quote unquote normal family. Let's say that, dad loses his job and things are really, really stressful. Well, mom's body creates stress hormones and that has an impact on that developing kiddo. And so, so this idea that, well, if I just adopt him straight home from the hospital, it's all going to be great and easy. Well, it's not. There is a lot that goes on in utero and then after that causes struggles, and so it's tough. And so, like, listening to podcasts and reading books and things like that, just constantly trying to learn more about how to help um, these these kiddos through these big difficult emotions, um, is one of the top things. Just so being aware at the outside that it's going to be tough, and then being willing to try to learn. We can't you can't do things, you can't parent the way you were parented. um, Chances are you can't parent the way you were parented, because they're not going to respond the way that you probably did, right? And so just being aware at the outside that it's going to be tough. There's going to be days when you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the hardest thing I've ever done." And then, being willing to learn. And, there's Facebook groups or different places that you can go to feel connected and be part of a community because, you know, um, there's an isolation that comes with bringing kiddos into your home from the foster system, right? People around you, they don't know what to do, what to say, how to treat these kiddos. And so a lot of times it's easier to take a step back. There's some folks out there that are gonna be like, I don't want my kids around those kids, and things like that. And so, trying to be part of a community of people that kind of have that same value and beliefs that you do, that's tremendously valuable. And so that's it's kind of, and then pray, right? Pray that and ask, is this God, is this really what you're calling me to do? Because when you're in the fire and when you're in the middle of it, you're gonna have a doubt. You're gonna be like, are you sure this is really what we're supposed to be doing?
You mentioned some parents or even some people may not want to be around foster children.
hmm
What impact do you think that maybe shame or guilt
There,
plays
yeah,
in that role?
that is part of it. Like, I don't want to be around them because it makes me feel like maybe I should be doing that, right? It's like I don't want to be reminded of all these kids that are out there in the foster system, and so I just don't want to think about it. I don't want to kind of want to bury my head in the sand, and I don't want, and I just want to go about my life and not really think about it. And so there is some of that to that. I think that uh, there are folks out there that would just rather not be reminded that there's in the U.S. there's over 400,000 kids that are in foster care right now. And so the need is tremendous. But if I don't see it on social media, if I don't see it, if not around people that have done it and things like that, then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about all those kids that need a home.
I like that because that was something that I didn't necessarily think about until you mentioned it. Whereas if I walk around and I see Matt or I see someone else with foster children, maybe there's something inside me that will question why am I not able to do that? And
Hmm.
I may feel whatever it is might feel. And instead of maybe trying to resolve it or understand it, I'm just going to say I'm not going to be around Matt and his family because I don't want
Right.
the reminder, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's a strange way of looking at it. You're taking something that's positive and it's turning into something potentially negative.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I think that there's a lot of, here's the deal. I have seen, through the work of this nonprofit, there's a lot of folks in the foster care world that think that the community around them just, they don't care. Um, a- and I think that is some folks. But by the same token, there are a lot of folks who do, and I have seen the response of folks going and getting licensed after hearing me speak, or realizing, a lot of folks think it's either foster or nothing. They don't realize that there's a whole bunch of ways to support foster and adoptive families that don't involve going and getting licensed, right? A volunteer. Can deliver a placement package to kiddos going to the Smiths, right? That's a way to be involved without bringing kiddos into your home. There's different ways to get involved that don't necessarily involve going and getting licensed. And so, my experience has been, no, not everybody that has heard me speak is going to go get licensed, but a lot of folks are going to do something. We host drives at like businesses and churches and stuff, and we're like, hey, we need size 3T, 4T clothes, at this business for the next month, and then people will bring it. And so that that has been a big part of our experience has been people, once they're confronted with it, they do respond. So it's not that the community doesn't care. Are there some folks that are that way? Yeah, there are. But our experience through this organization, I mean, I started this in 2017. Our experience has been that people once they're confronted with it, they step up. We delivered 161 placement packages last year, to kiddos coming into foster care across the 26 counties, and the vast majority of those are delivered by volunteers. And so, yeah, the community does care. Once they're made aware of that need, they'll respond.
You're a non-profit,
Mhm.
and the placement packages that you deliver and the children that you're interacting with and the families that you're working with, what are maybe some of the obstacles that you're still seeing that these families and these foster children are experiencing?
You know, we step in and we provide that emergency support within the first 24 hours. Um, and it's great. The foster families, the kid, I had a caseworker call me, um, and she was like, the kids were like, "Oh my gosh, this is like Christmas morning." They've just felt so valued and seen. And so we support them in that first 24 hours, right? But then they need other support mechanisms day in and day out, and that has been, that's that's a struggle. There are a few nonprofits around our area that do different things to support foster and adoptive families. But man, there are a ton of things that folks could do to help foster families that they don't think about. You know, like most of the time, you know, if a couple goes and gets they pregnant and they go to the hospital and they have the baby and they come home and you know people will do a meal train for them and they're like bring them meals for the next week or something like that just to help them kind of get acclimated and things like that. That is something that folks can do when foster families bring these kiddos in, right? It's not hard. I mean, you could just Uber eat them some, get them, send them some food. You know, that's just a small way that folks can get involved and support families that makes things so much easier if you don't have to worry about meals for the next week.
Matt, let me ask you one final question before I let you go.
Mhm.
I want to give you three wishes. And this is something that you can wish that everyone knew, or I'm going to ask it a different way, actually. What are three things you wish a community can come together to give foster children, foster families, and why?
Mm. Helping them feel seen and supported, right? Supported can mean a whole host of different ways. Like I said, just bringing them some food or you know offering to babysit, right? Uh, Babysitting for a foster family is a whole process, right? You can't just call up your sister and say, "Hey, will you watch the kids for a couple hours so I can go on a date?" Well, they got to go through this whole approval process and things like that. And so um, being willing to step up and help the families that are in your area, right? There are foster families everywhere, and they need support, they need help, they need you know our organization. We're a nonprofit, right? So we need funding. There's nonprofits everywhere that are doing something to support foster and adoptive families. And so, you know, you could set up and give $100 a month or something like that to a nonprofit that's serving foster families. You know, they're however they choose to support. You know, just find some families and figure out a way to